Folks, if I can have your attention once again, and welcome everyone to the 7th Annual Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame Induction. We are so glad you're here with us. We've got great plans tonight, great food and everything. We want to get a few things out of the way before we eat, and then we'll get that taken care of. You athletes who haven't had your picture taken for your All Sports Pass over here, Nate and I will be going around during the dinner, and we'll be picking you out to make sure we can get your picture and get your passes printed tonight and get that all taken care of. We've got a lot of things going on tonight. As always, our Hall of Fame, our Athletic Hall of Fame, we try to recognize and remember a few of the athletes, two of the athletes who passed on the field playing for Nelsonville-York over the years, and that was in 1969, Mr. Bruce Evans, and then in 1974, Mr. Clint Hoskins, along with a member this year of the 2012 team that passed on, Mr. Carl Moody. So before we begin, we'll have a moment of silence for those athletes, please. We thank you very much. Hall of Famers who are going in tonight, we do have a wall of fame down at the gym, the Ben Wagner gym. You've all been there. Your plaque will go up there and your picture and what have you after tonight. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. When you come up and give your speech afterwards, we're going to ask that you go over this way. We'll make sure we get your picture taken, and an award presentation. We'd like to have that also. So after your speeches tonight, just walk over that way and we'll get that all taken care of. We'll ask our Hall of Fame members that are going in tonight, when we start to eat, we'll ask that we release you and your families first to the food line so we can get you through there and get the food out of your mouth before we bring you up here to talk tonight. We'll do that here in a little bit. First thing I want to do here, first person I want to bring up is our committee chairman and our historian and the guy that puts these great videos together and the guy who has contacted and talked to all of you, Mr. Nathan Dean. Nate.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know, my name is Nathan Dean, again, and I'm the president of the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame. There's a couple people I'd like to shout out. If you guys want to raise your hand if you're here. And it's just the rest of the members of our committee. That's Steve Cox, Cheryl Nunley, who was up at the front. You guys saw her when you came in. Greg Jones, Greg Warren, Jay Klein, and Whitney Maiden. This is a great group. We get together a couple times a year and discuss who is supposed to represent our school in this Hall of Fame. So thank you so much, everyone. I'd also like to shout out our school board president, Mike Covert, and our superintendent back there sitting in the blue. Great job, Rick Edwards, for being here. Thank you. And then also I'd like to thank Christy Poling and the nutrition staff for putting on this great catering event. Every year it gets better and better, and we love it. Some things that you guys may have noticed, on that pamphlet on the back side, there's a QR code. That QR code, if you scan it with your smartphone, will take you to our Nelsonville-York Hall of Fame website. Whitney Maiden back there has done a phenomenal job with our website. You can see who went in. You can see by class, by athlete. You can make a donation to the Hall of Fame, and you can also see who's on the committee and just a little bit of bio on them. So thank you so much, Whitney, for that as well. Now, back to this year's class. Since we started this process, 7 classes have now entered this prestigious group. We welcome men, women, coaches, athletes, contributors, and everyone who have helped turn Nelsonville-York athletics into what we see today. This year's class is very special, and it has a graduating range of 55 years. As we go throughout the program, I think there's a few words and phrases that you're going to notice, and that you just hear them over and over again. You'll hear about how great teammates and leaders each and every single one of you were. You'll hear about the abnormally massive and strong hands of our wrestlers, and as friends of some of them, it's painfully true. But I think the thing that I like the most is hearing about how tough each individual was. Every single one of them, everyone I talked to said how incredibly tough they were. This class is also pretty special because we have a couple football players who are from the graduating class of 74, 90, 93, 2006, and 2012. And in 38 years span, I would put money on it that if I said the words pitch 18, flip 9, and 14 wedge. Every single one of them would know exactly what they were supposed to do in their assignment. You don't get that much at other schools. You don't get the tradition and the history. And that's why our athletic motto is pride, tradition, excellence. We're extremely excited to have you all here. Tonight, you will find between all of our athletes 52 varsity letters, 31 all-conference selections, 14 individual TVC champions, 11 TVC championship teams, 11 all-state selections, 8 district and regional champions, 8 state qualifiers, 5 school record holders, 4 TVC players of the year, 4 collegiate athletes, 2 members of TVC championship teams that were the first in school history in their respective sport, 1 SCOAL champion, a pioneer for women's athletics, and one of, if not the best wrestling team to ever come out of Southeast Ohio. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we're very excited for you to join us tonight. I'm going to give you back to Steve.
Thanks, Nate. One group we did forget to thank, and I want to thank them now, is the boys from DNR Studio. You see them behind the cameras there. That's Dave Norris and Ron Mash. They put this video together, and it will be on Channel 15 once they get it edited and everything, so we want to thank them for being with us here tonight also. Nate mentioned our school board president, Mr. Micah Covert, and I'm going to ask Micah to come up and say a few words before we get started. Micah. Right behind me.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Micah Covert, and I'm honored to serve as your president of the Nelsonville-York City Schools Board of Education. On behalf of the entire board, Mr. Rick Edwards, our superintendent, and Mrs. Sandy Hurd, our treasurer, I'd like to thank you for being here tonight. I'd also like to personally thank the folks from the Hall of Fame committee. They do a wonderful job, and our board and the administration are completely supportive of this, and it's a wonderful project that has enhanced our community. I'd like to thank our food staff back there from the nutrition group and our folks here on campus. I'd like to thank DNR Studios as well, and Nelsonville TV Cable. And it really is a privilege for me to stand before you, not only as president of the board, but also as an alumni of Nelsonville-York City Schools, and share in this celebration of excellence and dedication and the indomitable spirit that has defined our school's athletic legacy. Tonight we honor those who have left an indelible mark on our school's history, individuals whose commitment to sportsmanship, discipline, and determination have not only brought glory to our school, but have also inspired generations to come. And as Nathan's child comes right in. Yeah. Yes, but we are here to recognize more than just athletic achievements. We're here to celebrate the embodiment of the values that shape true champions. In the realm of sports, we often witness moments of triumph that resonate beyond the confines of the playing field or the court. These moments remind us that success isn't solely measured by the score on the scoreboard, but by the efforts, the teamwork, and the resilience that led us there. Our Hall of Fame inductees tonight are emblematic of these qualities. They are individuals who have exemplified leadership, dedication, and passion in their pursuit of excellence. And as we reflect on the journey that has brought us to this evening, let us also acknowledge the countless hours of practice, the sacrifices, the camaraderie, and the unwavering support from families, coaches, teachers, and teammates. Behind every achievement lies a network of people who believed in these athletes and nurtured their talents. And tonight we celebrate all of them as well. To the inductees, your legacy will forever be woven into the fabric of Nelsonville-York High School's athletic history. You are role models for our current and future student athletes, proving that with dedication, perseverance, and a steadfast commitment to your goals, the impossible becomes achievable. To the current student athletes who might be here this evening or who watch on Channel 15 later, May the stories you hear tonight serve as a reminder that your dreams are within reach. You strive for greatness, embrace challenges, and remember that the journey extends beyond the lines of the court, the track, or the field. As we honor the past, let us look forward to the future. And indeed, if you've wandered around our campus lately, you'll see how we are investing in the future of athletics at Nelsonville-York. Our Hall of Fame inductees have set the bar high, and I have no doubt that the students of Nelsonville-York will continue to rise to meet that challenge. And together we will continue to foster an environment of growth, sportsmanship, and community pride. Congratulations once again to our esteemed Hall of Fame inductees. Your achievements inspire us all, and your legacy will forever shine brightly within the halls of Nelsonville-York High School. Thank you, and go Bucks.
We want to recognize any past Hall of Famers who are with us tonight. We have a good turnout every year of Hall of Famers from other classes who are here. If you are a past Hall of Fame inductee, please stand. Okay, in the interest of time, we decided to try something new this year. I'm going to put our 2023 inductees on the spot right now, and the fact that it's time for you to go eat. You can't take everyone with you. Pick one loved one, take them with you, get through the line, and then everyone else fill in after that. We want to get the Hall of Famers to eat quickly and get up here so we can start the speeches. Pick one, start a family feud, and get up there and eat. You look great, Hall of Famers, each one of you, each one of you. Before I begin my introductions, again, I forgot to mention, we will hopefully see all you inductees tomorrow at the football game. We play River Valley tomorrow. We plan on beating them and hope you can be there for that. 6:20, if you can line up. We've got a new inflatable football helmet at the end of Boston Field. Coach Klein will be there to greet you at around 6:20, and then we'll introduce you and have you come on the field and introduce you at 6:30. So if you can be there by 6:20 at the football field tomorrow, we'd appreciate it. And on we go. Ladies and gentlemen, like last year, this year's class of the Nelsonville-York Hall of Fame is quite spread out. Like last year, we go back to 1957 to grab one of our inductees, and we head clear up to the class of 2012 to grab a couple more in this class of 9. We take in legendary Buckeye athletes, as well as the most storied team in Nelsonville-York wrestling history. As I say every year, the main reason they have me up here is that I'm old enough to have watched, played alongside, coached, or been coached by every single inductee present tonight, including our 1957 inductee, who I played some men's basketball with back in the day. As always, if you hear me say something that doesn't quite ring true, deal with it. I make a lot of this up as I go. We begin this Hall of Fame, we began it back in 2017, and our inductees that year went in for their accomplishments in individual sports. We quickly realized that Nelsonville-York athletes are exactly that, athletes. And in most cases have represented our school in multiple sports and starred in multiple sports during that time. So while we may focus on one particular sport, we hope to bring up all of your accomplishments during your time in our school system and hopefully even beyond. Each of you here tonight deserve to be in the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame. And when your name is called this evening, we would love for you to take a few minutes and give us a quick reflection on your time here at NY and in our school system. What it meant to you, where you're at now, and what you've been up to, and of course those you'd like to thank for making your induction tonight a reality. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, in no particular order, let's meet some of Nelsonville-York's finest. Jim Monk is a Nelsonville-York graduate from the class of 1990. While a member of the Buckeyes, Jimmy was a standout on the gridiron, on the track, and in the throwing pits. In his 4 years, he would collect 6 varsity letters, 4 all-league selections, 2 TVC discus championships, and would break and still hold a school record in discus while placing top 6 in the state in the shot put. Jim Monk was a strong, hard-nosed football player who excelled in Coach Dave Boston's teams. A head-hunting linebacker in the middle of the Buckeye defense and one of a long line of legendary Buckeye tailbacks on offense. In his time, Monk would be named first-team All-TVC in both his junior and senior season, was named first-team All-Southeast District, and finished it up with an honorable mention All-State selection. In 2020, Jim was named to the 1980s NYHS Football All-Decade Team twice, as an honorable mention selection at tailback and linebacker. In track and field, Jim continued the historical Buckeye dominance in the throwing area, both discus and shot put. A 4-year letterman for the Buckeye track team, he was known as one of the best throwers in our entire area. In his junior and senior year, Jim would be named All-TVC, winning the Tri-Valley Conference Championship in shot and discus both years. He would also become the regional champion in the shot put and discus his senior year. In 1990, Jim broke the school discus record once held by current Hall of Famer, sitting in the back there, Greg Jones, with a throw of 165 feet 6 inches. 33 years later, that record still stands. After dominating the region in both shot and disc, Jim qualified to go to the state meet in both events. He would finish 6th in the state in the shot put, with his best career throw being 57.5. Second in school history, behind Greg Jones. Jim went on to continue his academic and athletic career at the University of Pittsburgh, and his high school athletic success followed him into the Big East. In 1993, he was the Big East champion in the shot put and was named University of Pittsburgh Athlete of the Year. He would follow that up with a dominant season in 1994, winning the Big East once again in shot and qualifying for the National Track and Field Meet.
One thing about Jim I knew from the start was he was always the star. He's always good at whatever sport we were playing. Seemed just to be a natural in everything.
Jimmy was a three-sport athlete to begin with in high school. He played football, basketball, and then did track. And then as he progressed through school, he mainly focused on football and track.
And then in high school, he started throwing shot and disc, and that became his real love. And he just worked at it. So he had a natural ability. He had, size and speed, power, and then with his work ethic, he just became excellent at it.
One was his just competitiveness. Jimmy, no matter what it was, always wanted to strive to win and work hard to win. And I remember when we were on the field. He never came off the field. He was on special teams, played offense, defense, and that was probably one of the biggest things was he was a competitor.
This is Production.
The thing about Jimmy was Jimmy could play tailback. He was probably a better quarterback than me, so he probably could have played quarterback. He could have played wideout, played guard if he wanted to. If you needed somebody to fill in or run, do any type of position, Jimmy could jump in and actually excel at whatever he did. So I would say one word would be athletic, and it would be because he could pretty much do everything.
Determination. He's always determined, be it with hard work or, in the football field, he wanted to win. He did not want to be second place. He didn't want us to take a break for a second, no matter what the score was. He didn't want us to relax and take it easy on anybody. He wanted us to keep going 100% every play, every time. I think his determination to win is his probably greatest attribute.
I say excellence, and also a competitiveness, because when Jimmy was on the field, or when especially during track, he excelled at whatever he did. And even through high school and in college, Jimmy won all kinds of awards, all kinds of track meets. And so I would say probably excellence is the biggest thing, and then his competitive drive, made those results happen.
He was always in the weight room. He was always working on his form and technique in the shot and disc. When you watched him throw, his technique was just excellent. He was throwing, his form in high school was like form of people that had thrown 4 years in college. He just looked so smooth and natural at it. He laid the groundwork for a lot of more great discus and shot throwers. There was one thing that was going to happen with Jim. He was never going to be, he was never going to lose because he wasn't prepared to play the game.
Well, the biggest thing that I'd like everybody to know is that Jimmy was probably the best athlete that came through school as I was going through school, and I wanted to make sure that he got recognized for his achievements and all the hard work that he put in. So, Jimmy, if you're hearing this, congratulations, and you are well deserving of this award.
That weight room comment was correct. I was his JV basketball coach, and I had to drag him out of that weight room just to play a basketball game for me now and then. So that was definitely a true comment there. I know he's anxious to get the ball rolling tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I present for induction into the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame, Mr. Jim Monk.
Okay. I'm not much of a public speaker, so bear with me here. First, I'd like to thank Greg Jones and the committee for voting me in, and it's a real honor. I do really appreciate it. I'd like to thank my wife and kids and family for coming, and friends for coming here tonight. When I think about my time at Nelsonville-York, I was here in the late 80s, graduated in 90. I think about how lucky I was. This is where I was supposed to be. I mean, we had great teachers, good teachers that were willing to help you. We had great coaches. I mean, we had Coach Boston and Coach McLaughlin at the same time at this school for 25 or 30 years. I mean, what other schools have that for such a long time, you know, coaches of that caliber? And that's why I always think, every time I think of this place, I think, what a special place, and I'm glad that this is where I was. But there's two people in particular that I have to thank, because without them, I wouldn't have, you know, my accomplishments would have been minimal. And that's Jack and Barb Reichenbach. And any of you that were here between the mid-'70s to the mid-'90s, I'm sure you remember the Reichenbachs. So when I think about why I decided to go out for track my freshman year instead of play baseball like I always had, you know, I thought the running would make me faster for football. The lifting and throwing would make me stronger for football. It's probably because I couldn't hit a curveball. But it ended up being a real good decision for me. So I fast forward to the end of my sophomore year. After practice one night, Jack and I are talking, and he said, you know, I think you could do this in college if you really worked at it. Would that be something you'd be interested in pursuing? And it never dawned on me. Going to college, I'd never thought about that. You know, of course, everybody wanted to go play for Ohio State, but that wasn't going to happen. But I said, yeah, I mean, I would be really interested in it. And he said, well, if you want to do this, I need 100% commitment from you, not just at practice, not just in the weight room, but in the classroom also. Because he said, if we're going to do this and we're going to put in all this work, there's no point in it if you don't have the grades to get there. And he's right, I didn't have the grades to get there. My only academic goal at that point was to be eligible for next game. And I barely was making that. But, I said, yes, I absolutely 100%, let's do it. So for the next several years, Jack taught me how to throw, taught me how to lift, taught me how to train. Barb taught me how to be a student, how to study, how to be prepared for what I had to do academically. And thanks to them, I got to go do that. I got to go to the University of Pittsburgh and throw. I got to see a lot of really great cool things, a lot of really cool places, and I got to meet a lot of really great people. And that's all thanks to them. And I just wanted to take my little time here to remind people what a big part they played in making Nelsonville-York a special place during their time here. So, thank you.
Mr. Jim Bump. In talking football, if I brought up names like Broadway Joe or Prime Time or the Bus or the Fridge, most of you, not all of you, would know who I'm talking about and know that they are some of the most famous, well-known athletes to ever play the game. In sports, you have certain nicknames that define and identify a player, and when you hear them, you know who that person is, what they look like, and what legacy they left. Small-town football is no exception. And in the early 1990s, the Nelsonville-York Buckeyes had the Murray City Maniac suiting up in the backfield on Friday nights. Casey Nungester is an NY graduate from the class of 1993. In his time at Nelsonville-York, Casey was selected All Tri-Valley Conference 5 times, was named the TVC Most Valuable Player, and to cap it all off, was an All-State selection. One of the finest to ever take the field for Buckeye football, he also dominated on the baseball diamond. He would be selected All Tri-Valley Conference 3 years in a row while suiting up for the Nelsonville-York baseball Buckeyes. And he would set the single-season hit record previously held by Buckeye Hall of Famer Mike Bishop. In 2 years as the starting fullback for the Buckeyes, Casey would compile 2,681 career rushing yards, 38 rushing TDs, and he averaged over 7.5 yards per carry. He was a major cog on one of the best football teams Nelsonville-York ever had seen, helping the Buckeyes to a 10-0 record in 1992, putting an incredible cap on the career for himself and for Coach Dave Boston Sr. Casey was a two-time first-team All-TVC selection, and in 1992 was named TVC Offensive Most Valuable Player. First-team All-Southeast District, followed up with a second-team All-State selection. In 2020, Casey was named to the 1990s NYHS Football All-Decade Team as a first-team fullback.
He was always one of the most hard-nosed football players that I'd ever played with. No matter whether it was defense or offense, he was always going to hit you. He was the guy that he never run around you. He would always want to look to run over top of you.
Just Casey always surprised me. He would run you over, but his speed was just deceiving, and he would just, after running you over, he would outrun people.
When it comes to football, Casey was always prepared, and he was always focused. He was always the jokester off the field, but could always flip that switch. Casey always loved to have fun, but as soon as it came down to game time, he could always put on the game face and was 100% in for the whole game. So that's kind of Casey.
Casey was gifted athletically. He had a raw talent, his ambition. In my opinion, he could have very easily been the all-time leading rusher at Nelsonville. He would do anything that was asked of him. Definitely team first.
Casey's just one of the toughest guys I ever played with. Both sides of the ball, he was always looking for that hit. Probably one of the plays I remember the most about Casey is he was actually kicking off. We were playing Alexander. He kicked off. He kicked kind of a short kick. He actually ran down the field and made the tackle and pretty much annihilated the kid right there on the field.
I do remember him on a kickoff, kicking the ball up. I believe it was against Alexander, and he hit the guy so hard that it gave us goosebumps to hear the hit.
You could hear the whole crowd, just the wind went out of the entire crowd, and it was just silent.
I also remember at Benton County playing down there. It would have been his senior year. We were both undefeated, and his calm demeanor on the field, and just, we're going to come out here, we're going to destroy them. Give me the ball. I'll do what I need to do to help protect you. He was so vocal and calm in that big moment that I think that's what carried us to victory.
Casey will always be known by all the people that played with him for being just hard-nosed and somebody that loved the game, was just as tough as it comes.
He held everyone to a high standard on the field, and he held himself to an even higher standard. He wanted to make sure that he was team first. He would do everything in his power to make sure that he was prepared mentally, physically for the game. And I'd say competitor. He was always competing against everyone, no matter what it was, whether it's phys ed, whether it's on the football field, baseball field, basketball court. in ping pong in high school gym class. He was always competing and wanting to outdo his opponent.
Casey was one of the best teammates that you could ever have. Always look out for you and take up for you at any time. And that was probably the best thing that I remember about him. We were captains together, and we were brothers on and off the field.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Casey on this great honor. It's well deserved. He's an amazing athlete, but an even better person. I think the world of Casey, and I'm so happy for him.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present for induction into the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame, Mr. Casey Nungester.
Well, I wrote a few things down here. I'm not much of a public speaker, but we'll try to get through this. I would like to thank the association. I really appreciate being honored here tonight. I'd like to start by thanking Nathan. Nathan, without you, we probably wouldn't get this recognition. You put in hours and hours of work, and we really appreciate that. I'd like to thank my wife, Lori, my son, Bryson, my daughter, Ava. They're some of my biggest fans in life. They get me through. Also, my parents and my 4 brothers, my sister. They were great. They helped me a lot growing up. And to all my teammates throughout the years. Without my teammates, I wouldn't have had any achievements at all. They were wonderful. They did their jobs, I did mine, and we understood that. I'd like to thank all my coaches. Being a coach, it's a special job. They're not just your coach; they're your role models. They shape young people's lives. Of all the coaches I had, my successes on and off the field. I'll remember one thing from one coach. And that is, if anyone's ever played for Coach Boston, it's the run it again. Everybody that's played for Coach Boston knew the run it again. And I've kept that motto in my life, throughout my life. Run it again to me meant that if you fail, you don't give up. You try again, and try again. And that's always been a motto that I've kind of stuck with, and it's helped me. It's helped me quite a bit through life. And like I say, I just want to thank everyone for this incredible honor, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Casey Nungester. It's important to note that our past molds and shapes us into who we are today. That goes for each and every person, but also for a school district. The legacy of Nelsonville, Buchtel, Buchtel-York, Murray City, and Carbon Hill High Schools make us the Nelsonville-York Buckeyes we are today. Tonight we honor that legacy as we induct a graduate of one of those former schools into our Hall of Fame. Bob Young is a 1957 graduate of Nelsonville High School, and a former Greyhound enters our hall tonight as a legacy member. Bob was a 3-sport athlete for the Red and Gray, collecting 9 varsity letters in his time, 3 apiece in football, basketball, and track and field. On the basketball court, Bob assisted the Greyhounds to their 4th and final SEOAL championship in the 1956-57 season. At the end of the campaign, Bob was named first team All SEOAL. Impressive for the time, as only one person was named to the all-conference team at each position. On the football field, Bob helped the Greyhounds to some of the best seasons in school history. He was named first team All SEOAL in 1956, along with fellow Hall of Famer Ed Keating. Bob continued his athletic and academic career at the University of Dayton. He played football and would face his old high school teammate in a game versus the University of Miami. In that game, Bob would score 2 touchdowns against his former teammate, one of which was a 93-yard kickoff return. He used his athletic ability to succeed in all sports, and track and field was no exception, running the high and low hurdles while also performing the high jump for the Greyhounds. Bob was able to do something that is a little unheard of today. He was a 3-time SEOAL champion, dominating the area runners in the 180 low hurdles and the 120 high hurdles, as well as the high jump. His efforts would lead him to the district championships, where he would walk away with second place finishes in both the 120 and 180-yard hurdles, and a district championship in the high jump. The unheard of part, the Greyhounds won the team championship that year, with only 2 athletes competing, Bob Young and Wayne Dixon. Bob's performance would qualify him to attend and compete at the highest level, the Ohio State Track and Field Championships. There he would claim 3rd place in the state of Ohio in the high jump in 1957.
I could talk about Bob a long time. He was a great athlete. Played football and basketball, for 4 years, and then Bob and Wayne were really good in track. But and they were just super athletes. Bob made everything look easy. And for instance, he played safety in football, and he would stand back there with his hands on his hips, and he would say, "Look at him." And as soon as he saw where the ball was going, he could take off and be there in about 3 seconds or so, to get the ball there. So he had a lot of mobility. Starting my freshman year in high school, we used to have these drills where our punter would kick the ball down the field, and we'd have 3 linemen running down the field to try and tackle the backs, and they were all by themselves down there, so they had to wait to get the football in their hand and then try and run 30 yards back to the kicker. And I don't think that in all my years, 3 or 4 years in high school, that anybody ever tackled Bob Young in that drill. We couldn't touch him. He just he had a lot of speed for it's a big guy like that that's fast. You don't usually see that too much. He was good in basketball and football and track, and of course he pitched in baseball, and he could just do it all. Bob and Wayne ran high, low hurdles. Bob threw the discus, and it was really sad because we didn't really have enough on the team to run relays, but Bob and Wayne would get enough points, just the 2 of them. When you look at size and speed, and strength, Bob had a lot of strength because he had that all-around talent, very coordinated, very fast, very strong, well-rounded in everything that he would do, not only on the field, but in the classrooms, mentally. He just was a skilled person in whatever he tried to accomplish. When I went to Miami on a football scholarship, we started off playing Dayton, Ohio, and they came down, and Bob was on the Dayton team, and we scored 3 touchdowns that day, and Dayton scored 2, and Bob Young was the one for Dayton that scored 2 long touchdown runs against us. I told our guys in the locker room, said, "You know that guy you couldn't tackle?" I said, "That was my high school classmate." I'm just so happy and proud of that. It's a tremendous pick. I mean, you couldn't have picked a better guy because he really could accomplish a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present for induction into the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame, Mr. Bob Young.
Hopefully I can make it up the stairs. Oh,
You're moving better than I
yeah.
do, buddy. Congratulations.
Where's Greg tonight?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I want to thank the committee and especially Greg Warren, who did a lot of digging through my old scrapbook. We spent a couple mornings down at the Tammy's restaurant going through that. And I remember when Wayne Dixon's daughter, Amy, was inducted, she came down there and I showed her Wayne's achievement in the scrapbook that I had, and she was appreciative of that. One of the things I wanted to talk about was a little bit of history. When we played football in those days, 1954, 55, 56, we didn't get any water during practice. Now, if you can imagine 8 to 10 and 4 to 6 in August in full football uniform for about 2 hours, and we finished practice with a couple of 100-yard dashes and then a lap around the quarter-mile track to finish up, and then we would dive at this one little water fountain there where there was water. So we had a heck of a time surviving that. I'm surprised that nobody was killed in those days. I wanted to talk a little bit about the history. We were in the SEOAL, Southeastern Ohio Athletic League, and in that was Logan, Nelsonville, and Athens, Jackson, Wellston. Down on the river was Pomeroy, Middleport, and Gallipolis. We were the only two, Middleport and Nelsonville were the only two Class B schools. That was based upon the number of boys in the upper 3 grades. And because of this disparity, you saw there in the previous one about we hadn't beaten Logan in 28 years in football. And that was a long time. And I remember one time they brought 2 of the last guys that had beaten Logan into the gym there at Nelsonville to urge us on to beat Logan that night. And finally we did. In 1956, we beat them at Logan in football for the first time in 28 years. We were very happy about that. Ed was one of the guys on that team up there, and the previous year we had tied him, so we kind of ended that streak. I remember our coach, Mr. Cole, Lowell Cole, he always told us that your teammates are going to make you a better player, and that was certainly true. We had a bunch of guys in that class that he told us early on in I think about the 8th grade that we were going to be a pretty good bunch of kids, and I want to name off the guys that were in that class here. Many of them are long gone now, but Eddie Keating and Wayne Dixon, Tom McQuaid, Ralph Pierce, Danny Hitchings, Gary Flowers, Larry Bentley, Jerry Powell, Ray Tangway, and Jerry Stuffelbein. Our football team lost only 2 games in 2 years, and our basketball team were league champs, and we made the Sweet 16 in the state. We beat one of the best teams that Buchtel ever had in the finals of the district championship there in Athens. Of course, next year, or that next game, New Boston, ended our season. It's interesting when you look back at all those people that we played with, and many of them, as I said, are gone now. And I see my old teammate Eddie Keating sitting down here in front. He was inducted last year, and as they said, we played our first college game against each other. That was a lot of fun way back then. I wanted to look at a couple more here. I wanted to tell you about Coach Woody Hayes. Now, Mr. Cole was a very good friend of Woody Hayes. How many of you remember Woody Hayes? Okay, he was a famous Ohio State football coach. And Mr. Cole was a good friend of his. So at our junior football dinner, we had Howard Hopalong Cassidy, who was All-American Heisman Trophy winner, and Jim Parker, who was the #1 lineman in college football that year, come down to Nelsonville and attend our high school football banquet, thanks to Mr. Cole's influence with Woody Hayes. Of course, Woody was there also, so that kind of made for a very special night for us. Taking a look here, I've got to have, at my age, you've got to have something to remind you. I think I've covered just about all the high points. I saw all those earlier films, where you guys had the football films in color. That was great. We had it black and white, but none of them. I have a few of the old 16 millimeter films at home that I had put on a video one time, and you can take a look at them, but they were so bad that you really don't want to see it because you can't tell much of anything. There's a figure moving, and that's about all you can see. So once again, I want to thank them for inducting me here. This is a great honor, and I really appreciate it. And I'll be attending these from now on. Thank you very much.
Greg wasn't feeling too well tonight. Okay. He's doing all right. Yeah. Mr. Bob Young. Cheryl Nunley, Candy Conrad, Kim Dexter, trailblazers in women's sports at Nelsonville-York High School. Terry Mileski Barnes is another. Terry's a 1980 NY graduate. In her time as a Buckeye, Terry lettered each year and excelled in both basketball and track and field. When Terry got to high school, girls basketball was still in its infancy, having just been established a few years prior. In fact, in her freshman year, our girls team was still competing in the Southeast Ohio Girls Athletic League. The Tri-Valley Conference would not begin women's basketball competition until 1978. In Terry's years of competing at the varsity level for the Buckeyes, she helped bring home 3 track and field TVC championships, which includes the very first team championship for women's sports, not just in school history, in TVC history. Starting in 1978, Terry began her reign of dominance on the track. In that season, she would receive her first of 3 Tri-Valley Conference All-League selections, and she would receive the TVC's first ever MVP High Point Scorer Award, duplicating that feat again in her senior year. Since 1978, only 9 female athletes have won the TVC High Point Award more than once. 3 of them happen to be Buckeyes, and Terry Mileski gets the distinction of being the very first one to do it. She was also a star on the Lady Bucks basketball team, earning herself 2 All-Tri-Valley Conference selections along the way. Known for her tenacity on defense and on the boards for the Buckeyes, as well as her scoring, this 3-year letterman was voted team captain both her junior and senior year. Her coach, Mrs. Cheryl Nunley, remembers an athlete of absolutely consummate effort. Practice, scrimmage, or game, Mileski could be counted on to show up and give everything she had. Coach Nunley, having no assistants to help during those days, could count on Terry to run practice if the coach was giving individual instruction to one of the Buckeye players. We got no complaints from a team who had faith and confidence in Terry's leadership, a pioneer of women's sports at Nelsonville-York High School.
She provided leadership to some of the younger kids on the team by her example, her work example and her work ethic and her being on time and always having the right pieces of equipment and uniform and so forth.
She was very athletically gifted, also a very kind, and I mean, really a teammate. You know, she's kind of supportive of everybody. It wasn't just about her and her athletic ability. It was about being part of a team.
She left a legacy of hard work and dedication to the team and to her teammates, and a willingness to do what was necessary in the way of working or competing to help the team.
She left a legacy of women in sports, because the year, I believe it was my senior year, we had our first softball team, and so really women being respected as athletes was really coming into being at that point, and Terry was a great role model. Terry had dedication, so anything that Terry decided to get involved with, she was very dedicated to. And it wasn't just about dedicated to the team, but dedicated in her own personal preparation to make sure that she was the best that she could be to contribute to the team.
Unlike basketball or some other sports where maybe do better for themselves but not better for the team, track and field isn't that way. The better the individual does, the better the team does. And she was always concerned about doing the best she could and was willing to do things to help the team. For instance, she's always willing to run a relay. If you run a relay, you don't get as many points because the points are divided up amongst all four runners. But so that didn't bother her. She was always good with that for the team.
Terry was the kind of person that, like I said, she had personal dedication, but she also had dedication to her team and her teammates. And she was really kind in the fact that she didn't put people down. She would really try to help them be more comfortable, maybe help them with some fundamentals so that they could be the best they could be. And she had a way of doing this without making them feel like they were less or that they were lacking. She was just kind of a natural guide and that type of thing.
She was one of those kids that she got hurt one year, I think her junior year. I mean, typically track athletes, sprinters especially, can pull a quad muscle or something, and they need to stay off of it. And I practically couldn't get her off of it. She wanted to come out, she wanted to run. I say, well, you're hurt, you need to rest. No, I don't want to rest. That. So, that's the kind of person she was.
Terry is one of those rare people that you meet, that you always feel, even the first time you meet her, you feel welcome, you feel heard. So she's one of those people that just is steadfast in her friendship.
It was my privilege to have her as part of my team for 3 years. I want her to know that.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present for induction into the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame, Mrs. Terry Molesky Barnes.
Congratulations. Thank you. I'm not much with giving speeches either, but good evening, everyone. First, I want to congratulate all the inductees that are receiving this award tonight, and for everyone involved in selecting this year's 2023 Nelsonville-York Athletics inductees. I'm extremely honored to be receiving such an important award and being recognized for my athletic achievements in high school. I look forward to seeing my picture hang in the high school showcase along with all of the other past inductees. Next, I would like to thank my coaches, Coach Cheryl Nunley, Coach Bob Richards, and Coach Wild Bill Schaller for all of their hard work in teaching me how to be a good athlete, team player, and how to set goals for myself. Their education and guidance has helped me become the successful person that I am today. I'd also like to thank some very special people here tonight. My husband, Lewis Barnes, who has loved and tolerated me for the past 32 years. my nephew, Travis Molesky, who's an inspiration of hard work, and Sherry and Gary Dunphy, very special friends. Sherry's my high school best friend. So I'm glad you're here tonight. But last and not least, Carolyn and Fritz Bookman. They could not be here tonight because they're both sick. And they were kind of like my second parents during high school, and they've taught me so much about life, so I wanted to recognize them too. But many thanks to everyone involved in making this very special evening and for this very special award. Thank you.
Mrs. Terry Molesky Barnes. Legend has it that within a week of breaking his wrist, this athlete had his teammates cut the cast off his arm, and then he went on to wrestle and win the district championship, becoming the second wrestler ever to represent the Buckeyes at the state meet. That legend's true. I was one of the teammates that helped Gary Barber get that cast off. And he didn't just win the district meet, he absolutely dominated it with pretty much one arm. Gary Barber is an NYHS graduate of 1974. In his time at NY, he was a key member of the legendary Buckeye offense and defensive line, and one of the most feared heavyweight wrestlers in Southeast Ohio. The Nelsonville-York football Buckeyes joined the Tri-Valley Conference in 1970. In 53 years, the Buckeyes have been part of the league. They've won 25 championships, far and away the most of any team in the conference. The very first was 50 years ago in 1973, and Gary Barber anchored that powerful Buckeye offensive line as its center and was an immovable force on defense as the Buckeyes' nose guard. At that position, he recorded one of the better defensive games in school history with a then school record 15 tackles in a single game, 8 of those being solo, which was another school record and still ranks 7th for most solos in a game. Barber was awarded with an All-Tri-Valley Conference selection and was named second team All-Southeast District. In 2020, he was named to the 1970s NYHS football All-Decade team as a first-team nose guard with an honorable mention selection at center. In his 3 years as a wrestler at NY, we only had 3 years in those days, freshmen went to the junior high, Barber would make a case as one of the most storied wrestlers in Buckeye history. While it's common for wrestlers today to wrestle 50 or 60 matches in a season, 15 to 20 was the norm back then. Gary would annually win 15 to 20 matches. He won back-to-back titles at the prestigious Shenandoah Invitational and the Philo Invitational tournaments. He would not only win tournaments, he pinned his way through tournaments. In his junior and senior season, he was Tri-Valley Conference champion in his respective weight class, heavyweight, as I recall. And you might notice that when he comes up here. And in the 1973-74 season, he won the TVC Wrestling MVP award. That same year, he would become the Southeast Ohio District Champion and would go on to qualify for the state wrestling tournament. After graduation, Gary was recruited to Toledo University for both football and wrestling. While there, he found another interest that he would dedicate his life to. That would be the military. Joining the ROTC program at Toledo and the Army after graduation, he would make that his career, attending the Army Ranger School to become a Ranger and attack helicopter pilot, flying combat missions during the Gulf Wars. Even while serving, his desire to compete remained, and he quenched that desire on the wrestling mat. Balancing his military career and volunteer activities along with wrestling, his goal was to bring home an 84 or 88 Olympic gold medal. He was on track for that 84 team, but ended up failing to to the eventual Olympic champion. Wrestling all over the world with the All-Army team when he was not deployed, Lieutenant Colonel Barber would compete and defeat many Olympic and world champions. He was part of 3 USA National Wrestling Championship teams and 2 Greco-Roman National Championship teams. Throughout that time, Gary won 4 gold medals, 2 silver medals, and 2 bronze medals in national tournaments, while also winning 4 gold medals, 1 silver medal, and 1 bronze medal in international competition. After his competition days, he was named an assistant coach for the World Greco-Roman Wrestling, U.S. Wrestling team. Oh, and by the way, I told you he was a heavyweight. His sophomore year, he wrestled 185. He grew up after that.
He's one of those interesting athletes that the older he got, the better he got. Of course, the bigger and stronger he got, too. But, you know, he had hardly scratched the surface at 17 and 18 years old.
He was a really good athlete that went on to do great things. Toughness is something that he brought. I think he had a pretty good sense of humor, too.
Back when we played, they would teach centers to snap with 2 hands, and he had big enough hands. They let him do it with a 1.
I mean, he was big, you know, especially back in, you know, that's, you know, been, you know, 40 years ago or whatever, almost 50 years, you know, when, you know, you just didn't have that many big people.
In high school, he was probably 6'5", 215, 220, and at Toledo, he was probably up to 225, and probably by the end of his college career was probably 260 or 270. I mean, he grew into a big man. He was a big, raw-boned, powerful athlete. And so he was a really good football player, but in all honesty, where he excelled most was as a wrestler. And he got so good at it that people would come to watch, and they would stick around for the last bout, which was the heavyweight bout, to watch him pick some 250-pound person up and thump him. And that's really, as he got older, that's exactly what he did. He would dominate these other huge people from other schools, and he would just go out and just dominate them. And it was fun to go watch.
Probably one of the stories that most people don't know about him. You know, his senior year, he broke his hand in wrestling, going into the districts, and he was casted. I was with him in the back of the bus on the way to Lancaster for districts, and he literally wore the cast off. Got it to where we could take scissors and cut through it. And he took the cast off on the bus, had his hand taped up, and wrestled.
The biggest legacy that Gary left was that a kid from Nelsonville-York High School can go off in wrestling, compete at the state level, go wrestle in college. And Nelsonville has had a lot of success in wrestling, but he was at the very, very earliest stages of it. So that's his legacy. As big and strong as Jerry Barber was, he always was a nice man as well. Everyone in his class knew that. And we had a lot of good athletes, and he was the biggest and strongest of all of us.
The number one thing that I would want to say about Gary is, you know, Gary was just a very, very, very good, humble person who never looked for accolades. He went about his own business and created a great life for he and his family.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present for induction into the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame, Lieutenant Colonel Gary Barber.
Well, first I want to say that I thank God for the blessings I've received in attending this school, into having the best coaches, to having the best wife, the best mom. My brother and sister are here today, younger brother and sister, and they're the ones that made me tough because they beat on me all the time when I was a kid. And then, but Steve, I've got to tell you, Steve probably saved my career. Steve, and I don't know, I think I try to recommend some other voices on that tape, but my mom and dad told me that, and I wish my dad was here today, by the way, he passed away in '94, but I'm glad my mother's here. But my mom and dad didn't make much money, and they said, Gary, we know you're going to Lancaster to wrestle in the districts. You know, we paid a lot of money to put that cast on your arm. Don't go up there and wrestle that cast on your arm. And I didn't wrestle with a cast on my arm. I wrestled with it off my arm. And thanks to Steve Cox and a couple other folks, Coach McLaughlin's back here. And I think when he saw people trying to knock that cast off, Coach walked away somewhere else. I don't think he wanted to see it. But that created some avenues for me to get into college. And athletics from Nelsonville-York has made my career. The military has been great to me. And also working as a federal disaster responder for 13 years, working the worst disasters in this country that have been just mind-boggling. Working 9/11, I was sent to Pentagon to work that. The space shuttle disaster, I worked the space shuttle disaster. And actually we saw the shuttle break up over our house when we was in Texas. We went out in the yard and saw it. And little did I know I'd get a call 10 minutes later that says, get your butt on the plane, we got something to do. So that was after my Army years. But athletics has opened up so many opportunities for me. Briefing a president, meeting with 3 cabinet secretaries, meeting Bob Hope when I wrestled in the National Sports Festival. The National Sports Festival takes the top 4 athletes in every sport and they prepare them for the Olympics. And I didn't win that National Sports Festival. I was the alternate for the Pan American team for that. And by golly, the guy that beat me went to Caracas, Venezuela to wrestle in the Pan Am Games. And they called me that night and says, Gary, we need to get you to Venezuela immediately because the guy that beat you tested positive for steroids. And so we lost out on a heavyweight going to Caracas, Venezuela. So if I ever find that guy, I'm going to take care of him anyways. He lives in California, I do know that. But I am blessed with so many great, my kids, they're all Division I athletes. They're making fun of me because they made their high school Hall of Fames before I did. So one of them's the Big 12 champion in Oklahoma, and the other one was played in 2 New Orleans Bowls, played for University of North Texas. And so they've got their big rings, and they're always showing them off to me, but I show them my medals, so it's pretty good too. But I'm so blessed. My wife Connie's here. She just lived right up here on the hill. Nobody believes I was in the band, but that's where I met my wife, in the band. And at halftime, Coach Boston let me go out and play halftime in my football uniform. But so many great memories at school, so many values and norms I've learned from going to this school, and having a great mother, a great father, a great family. And daggone it, it was a long drive from Texas up here, 1,130 miles, but 70 degrees up here, 112 in Texas. I'm gonna stay up here for a few more weeks. So, but thanks to the committee for the honor to come here, and thanks for the great folks in the class of 1974. And that class was great because Steve Cox was in that class too. So, oh, and by the way, there was one guy that made me mad. His name was Gary Tayo. I don't know if Coach McLaughlin knows about this, but he made me mad in wrestling practice one day, and I picked him up, and there's still some DNA on the wall probably underneath one of the basketball goals, but I rubbed him till his, up and down on the wall till his skin come off his back. So those are the good old days. And then one last thing, Steve. I never thought about wrestling or playing football. I just happened to walk on him in on Coach McLaughlin's practice one day to wrestle, and I asked if I could wrestle. And but the other thing was Coach Boston. I never planned on playing football. Wasn't into it. I liked hiking and hunting in the Wayne National Forest, but I was sneaking over to see Connie, my girlfriend, and I was running over Bay City Hill, and then some Volkswagen Beetle pulls up next to me, and the guy says, "You want to ride?" And I said, "I'll take a ride." And it was Coach Dave Boston, senior. And I'll be darned, Coach Boston said, "Son, do you want to play football?" And I said, "No, Coach, I don't want to play no football. I wrestle for Coach McLaughlin, and that's where I want to stay." And he goes, "Well, Coach McLaughlin's a defensive line coach. Did you know that?" And I said, "I didn't know that." And I said, "I still don't want to play." I said, "Coach McLaughlin maybe get mad if I commit, but I'll be darned, within time I got over Bay City Hill, I was playing football for Nelsonville-York." And that's, thanks everybody. It was great.
Go get your picture taken, buddy. Lieutenant Colonel Gary Barber. I do remember the Gary Tayo story, Gary. I think Coach McLaughlin was there laughing at it too, if I recall. By no means is this order intentional. When we get our Hall of Fame inductees every year, I just draw them out of the hat, and that's the way they come up here. So you'll know what I mean when you see this next wrestler I bring up compared to that wrestler we just brought up. If you're a follower of Nelsonville-York wrestling, you've heard the name McLaughlin. If you've ever wrestled for Hall of Famer Coach Tom McLaughlin, you are aware of the premier wrestling program he built over many, many years at Nelsonville-York. If you were one of his wrestlers, as I was, you still have and always will have a great deal of respect for him, along with a very, very healthy dose of fear. Our wrestling room bears the name McLaughlin for good reason. Our next inductee bears that same last name. In fact, he bears the same first name. Thomas McLaughlin, during his wrestling career at NY, displayed the same drive, determination, willpower, and desire to excel as his legendary grandfather. And if you ever shake his hands, you'll see he has that same painful grip also. Like his grandfather, father, uncles, grandmother, sister, aunts, cousins, and mother, Thomas McLaughlin lived and breathed wrestling, day in and day out. It's a McLaughlin way of life. A 2012 graduate of Nelsonville-York, Thomas McLaughlin willed himself to become one of the best wrestlers to ever step on a mat for the Buckeyes. He was a major contributor to Coach Matt Yinger's teams in the years between 2009 2012, helping lead the Buckeyes in 2012 to the best season in school history. We'll hear more about that season and team a little bit later this evening. McLaughlin was part of 2 sectional championship teams, a district championship team, and helped lead his team to a 4th place finish in the state wrestling tournament in 2012. Individually, Thomas was a 3-year letterman on the Buckeye cross-country team, a sport he participated in to enhance his wrestling stamina, I suspect. During his 4 years on the mat for the Buckeyes, Thomas would win the TVC title each of those years, qualify for district each of those years, qualify for the state tournament each of those years, and place in the state tournament 2 times. In his senior year, he was named the Tri-Valley Conference Most Valuable Wrestler and wrestled his way into the 126-pound state finals, where he captured the state crown with a victory over Hicksville's Cody Laney. Thomas finished his Buckeye career with 165 wins, the most in Buckeye history. another storied chapter in the McLaughlin Book of Wrestling.
As a wrestler, I mean, he's one of the most dedicated people, I guess wrestlers I've ever come across. Like, just seeing what he put himself through, I mean, so impressive that he was able to succeed all 4 years of high school and eventually win state his senior year, while going through like the mental aspect of cutting weight. Like, he was still able to perform physically. And that's the thing about Thomas. He is probably the most mentally strong person I've ever met in my life. Nothing really gets him down, and if he has a goal that he wants to achieve, he will achieve it. Nothing's getting in his way. And that's something I really respect about him in life. And that's why he was able to succeed as a wrestler so much, because he wanted to win state, he wanted to succeed, and nothing was stopping him.
Thomas, he definitely was a leader, and and he demanded everybody's respect, but he trained and competed like a leader, and it wasn't something he asked of that he wouldn't do himself. He was a state placer as a freshman, and that kind of set the precedence right away then. One word to describe Thomas: a competitor. The one thing with Thomas, and even after he won his state title, he didn't get excited. He didn't do anything. He was a professional. I say, as a competitor, but because I don't use one word, but the other one I would use, he was a professional. And when he won his state title, he came over to me and I asked him, I said, why are you excited? You didn't run, jump my arms, you didn't do anything. He said, Coach, you've always told me to act like I've been there before. And he said, and I should have been here. He said, I should have been here before. He said, now I am.
Thomas was always the leader of our wrestling team, and he would always talk about in the summer going to nationals and going to worlds, being part of these all-star teams and going up to these different wrestling camps, being part of these clubs. He was always traveling as far as he could and getting as much wrestling in, as much experience as he could, to kind of hone his craft and become the success that he became.
He still demanded everybody else to be accountable and follow through and help that team become, the top 5 team. We were ranked number 1 in the state his senior year, and a lot of that was just due to his leadership, and then the other guys on that team all falling in line and being leaders themselves. The other guys on that team, followed along, and they knew they had to do, work above and beyond to be successful. And, Thomas made sure of that.
Thomas is just incredibly intentional about things that he cares about in life, and that carries over to wrestling too. Like, all aspects of it. He wasn't too good to try anything. I think he just took every opportunity he could to get better as a wrestler, and that really paid off for him in the long run.
Thomas was a great leader, even at 130 pounds. I mean, everybody in Ohio knew him. Everybody knew how tough he was. Everybody expected, he was gonna win a state title. It was a matter of, not if, but when.
I think the legacy that goes with Thomas isn't Thomas McLaughlin, the wrestler, but I think it's Thomas McLaughlin, the teammate, the leader, the strong man of faith who stands, firm and resolute in his beliefs, and nothing can sway him. And he just always does the right thing. He never takes any shortcuts in life. He never did that in wrestling. And I think you can ask all of his teammates that were with him in high school too. Like, Thomas went about things the right way, and I think that's what people will remember him for.
His drive and determination was just amazing. I'd never had anybody driven like him.
I'm blessed to call Thomas McLaughlin my best friend and someone that's just been there with me since 6th grade, and someone I've been able to learn from and just be with. And I think everyone that he's come in contact with, Thomas has positively impacted. So forever grateful that he's in my life, and grateful that he's able to be commemorated in our Hall of Fame. I think he is one of the most deserving members in it.
I just wish him the best throughout life and continued success, and just glad that things worked out for him, and it was very special. He deserved it, and he earned it. I'm just real proud of him.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present for induction into the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame, state champion, Mr. Thomas McLaughlin.
I don't want to tell you guys how much I paid Casey to say all that stuff. So I would like to thank everyone who came out tonight to show support for this special event. I cannot express how grateful I am for the opportunity to be inducted into the Nelsonville Athletic Hall of Fame. It's an honor to have the privilege to stand next to all these amazing athletes that are getting inducted this year, and it's humbling to be considered when we've had such amazing athletes throughout the history of Nelsonville. If you look at the people that stand in this Athletic Hall of Fame, you have people that have competed for or attempted to compete for the Olympics. You have people that have competed at every stage of athletics. And that's just absolutely amazing that the school has that kind of history, especially for coming from a small little town of Nelsonville-York, southeast Ohio. And Nelsonville, throughout Ohio, is known for wrestling. But our football team, our volleyball team, every team, people know that we produce athletes. And it's just amazing. But this accomplishment was not achieved by myself, but the community that raised me and pushed me to succeed. I obviously wouldn't be standing here today and be the person I am today without the love and support of my family. They also instilled in me the will never to lose. If you don't know my family, they hate to lose more than anything, I'm pretty sure. I want to thank my parents because they took me everywhere. Anytime I wanted to wrestle somewhere, anytime there was any amount of desire to hey, there's a wrestling meet in California, you're supposed to be at graduation. Mom's like, all right, you can go, it's nationals, it's fine. If it was a wrestling camp I wanted to go to, if it was a tournament that I found and told my dad 3 days before, they jumped in the car, drove me to Florida, and they always were there to support me. I don't think my parents missed a single tournament I ever went to. And they took me everywhere and paid for everything. They didn't make me pay a dime, so I'm thankful for that. My sister's not here, but I have to thank her because anytime I came back from a wrestling clinic or camp, she would be the wrestling dummy in the middle of the living room floor when I could show my dad and my mom my new move I learned. And she might be the second toughest person I know, right behind my grandpa. Speaking of my grandparents, I have to thank them a ton. Most of you know Vicki and Tom for what they've done for the community and exactly how generous and supportive they are. You also know that my grandpa, Tom McLaughlin, Tom is his name, not just coach, but coach is what he is defined as. If you guys can just every match I ever wrestled, after I was done wrestling and I talked to Coach Inger, I'd talk to my dad, then I'd walk up those bleachers and sit beside my grandpa and be told exactly what I did right and what I did wrong. And he always said it very kindly. And it wasn't just me that walked up to my grandpa. It was the most people on the team that would walk up those bleachers, sit beside my grandpa, and hear what he had to say about their match. So if I could say my grandpa had one superpower, it'd be coaching. And I know most of the people on his football team, and especially my dad, would say it was unnatural strength. But coaching is his true special power. The last people I want to thank is the wrestling family. Coach Inger and his entire family were fundamental to my success. If it wasn't just being there in the mornings before school, because my parents had to drop me off, and the constant bickering that we put on for Leslie to deal with, I thought she was going to kill me, between me and all of her children, but mainly Kaylee. But Coach Inger brings something to this world that is not seen very often. There's no one more passionate about anything than Coach Inger. There wasn't a moment you would walk into that room and not put your all out because he wouldn't let you. You weren't going to waste your time in that room, and you weren't going to waste his time. If you were stepping into that mat, you were going to wrestle, and you were going to wrestle with everything you had. And that intensity, that ability to draw the best out of people, is why we were so successful in those years. Coach Yinger makes you be better. He demands you be better. It isn't something that you can just slide by with him. He sees the potential in everyone, and he pushes you to get there. And I was no different. We had our bouts. We butted heads. Most of the time I lost, but I do want to say I'm pretty sure I won the last dodgeball tournament and the last wrestling match we had, so I'm going to take that one. I would like to end this with a piece of advice my grandpa gave me after a pretty upsetting match. This advice has not just shaped how I continue to wrestle, but my view on life. I just lost a close match to a really good wrestler, and I'd felt that I was cheated by the ref. I walked up the stairs feeling sorry for myself and sat down beside my grandpa, and I said something along the lines of, "Man, that ref cost me this match." And my grandpa looked at me and said, "No, you cost yourself that match. If you would have wrestled better, that ref couldn't have taken it from you. If you would have performed better, that ref couldn't have done anything." And what I took from that lesson wasn't about wrestling, but about life. Give your all in everything you do. Focus on what you can control. And when you fail, because you will fail, don't try to blame somebody else. Focus on how you can improve yourself and succeed the next time you go forward. So I just want to thank everyone here. I want to thank the board for putting this on and the great food we had. And just thank you so much.
Mr. Thomas McLaughlin. We're going to stick with wrestling now. To an outsider, wrestling looks like an individual sport. They see one solitary individual pitted against another one out on the mat. A wrestler, however, knows better. A wrestler realizes it's his coach, it's his training partners, all those around the program that make him the wrestler he is. A wrestler absolutely knows he's part of a team. He's part of a family, if you will. The storied Buckeye wrestling program was built by Coach Tom McLaughlin. When Coach Matt Yinger took over the program, he had one thing in mind: to continue the Buckeye tradition and add to it. Through an incredible stretch of time, Hall of Famer Coach Yinger, along with his assistant coach Andy Shine, put together some fantastic teams on the mat, winning multiple TVC and district championships. And then came 2012, the year Buckeye wrestling reached heights unheard of in our area. Wrestling in Southeast Ohio is often looked on as inferior by the rest of the state. In 2012, the Buckeyes served notice that Yinger's boys from Southeast Ohio would bow to no one from anywhere. The 2012 wrestling team reached heights the programs had never experienced before, traveling to the most prestigious tournaments in the state and holding their own, normally being the smallest school in those tournaments. This little team from this little school, called Nelsonville-York, was beginning to open the eyes of wrestling experts throughout the state. There was a team down south ready to make some noise. And make noise they did, winning TVC, winning the sectional championship, winning the school's first district championship, and still finishing fourth in the state championship meet while being hampered by injuries. At various times throughout the season, the Buckeye wrestlers were ranked as high as number 1 in the state within Division III and were the favorite to win it all before those all too common injuries in wrestling presented themselves at the wrong time. In the 2012 season, Thomas McLaughlin, Carl Moody, Dakota Hook, Jacob Kuhn, along with Zach and Dakota Mays, would claim Tri-Valley Conference championships in their weight classes as the Buckeyes would roll to the TVC title. That regular season dominance carried over to the sectional meet as Dakota Hook, Thomas McLaughlin, Carl Moody, Jacob Kuhn, Justin Kuhn, Zach Mays, and Dakota Mays all brought home titles. A team district championship would follow, and 5 Buckeyes would move on to the state meet, including 170-pound district champion Zach Mays. Thomas McLaughlin, Dakota Hook, Jacob Kuhn, Zach Mays, and Dakota Mays arrived at the state meet with 190 wins between them on the season. Each wrestler added to the Buckeye score at the state meet, with Dakota Mays and Jacob Kuhn garnering sixth place finishes and taking their place on the podium. 2 more would go the distance and take the state crown, as Thomas McLaughlin and Zach Mays became the 2nd and 3rd wrestlers in Buckeye history to do so. The first being their coach, Matt Yinger, back in 1989. Each member of the Buckeye squad had their moments of dominance throughout the season, garnering much needed points for each match and tournament on the Buckeye schedule. Each played a major role in mentoring, improving, and developing their teammates each day during these tough, grueling practices that only a wrestler could really know. The final words of the most storied season in Buckeye wrestling history, spoken on the radio by Buckeye legend Ed Buckeye Bateman, as Zach Mays won the team's 2nd state title of the evening. Oh my God, Mays has Robinson on his back. He can't go anywhere. He's going to pin him. Pin, pin, pin. That Buckeye squad, that Buckeye team did just that to its opponents during the 2012 season, dominating wherever it went and making its presence known throughout the state. Dakota Mays, Thomas McLaughlin, Dakota Hook, Josh Dieter, Justin Kuhn, Carl Moody, Jacob Kuhn, Andrew McDonald, Connor Hammonds, Brendan McCoon, Zach Mays, Joel Thompson, Mike Daly, Brandon Meeks, assistant coach Andy Shine, and head coach Matt Yinger. Will the 2012 squad come forward? I present, ladies and gentlemen, for induction into the 2023 Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame, the 2012 Nelsonville-York Wrestling Buckeyes.
Take it away, buddy. It's all you. Feeling, man. It's a different feeling being up here as a coach as opposed as an athlete. Wow, dropped right to my level. Yeah, it worked out perfect. Following up Thomas, that was kind of emotional listening to him, first of all, because these boys are my boys. They're my family. I mean, not just these ones, but everybody that's wrestled for me from when I started at Byrne Union back in '97, or even when I coached at Brooklyn. I've got friends from Brooklyn. I coached in Cleveland. This still messes me. I got Steve Young out here, who's a state runner-up for me. These guys all wrestle for me. They're my family. They're my boys, and they'll always be my boys. But following up Thomas, that was tough. But I did get, when he opened and ruled here and came to my house every morning, Leslie brought him to school. I did get notice of that every day, how they fought, and Leslie was sick of having to bring him to school every morning. It's time for me to start babysitting him more often. But this group here was really, really special. We started coming along in 2000, probably about 5, 6, Steve Young's years, and the program started just really growing. And people started noticing. Kids started transferring in. We had open enrollment and things. And, the Mays boys were wrestling. Their family was taking them all over the place. Thomas, the Hook boys, all of them. And all these guys just started buying in. And we started growing and growing. And I seen this thing starting to snowball. And I thought, man, what do we have here? And one thing I don't accept is mediocrity. And that came from my head coach, Coach McLaughlin. When I lost in the state finals my junior year, he made sure when I started tearing up that was unacceptable. From that day forward, I realized he's right. That's unacceptable. Get better, figure it out. And this group here, man, they were amazing. That year, like Steve Cox said, we were ranked number 1 from day 1. And it was obvious. I had 7 returning state qualifiers. Everybody ranked in the top 5. Injuries dismantled that team. One of our wrestlers tore his ACL in the last football game of the year. He was a returning 2-time state qualifier. He was done for the year. Carl Moody, who was a 2-time state placer, had dislocated his elbow in the middle of the season. He came back, but was never 100%. Connor Hammonds up here, he was our backup 106 at the time, broke his leg. Dakota Mays broke his foot. I mean, we had like 5 broken injuries. We were the #1 seed at the state duels. We walk into the state duels, and through the wrestling forums in Ohio, people kind of got out there, word that Nelsonville-York looked like they wasn't the Nelsonville-York they thought we were going to be. Well, we rolled in. Connor was in a wheelchair. Dakota Mays was on crutches. Carl Moody was in the hospital. And at the time, our heavyweight didn't make the trip. We walked in. They said, Yinger, the forms are right. You guys aren't sandbagging this time. You really aren't looking very good. Well, we were #1 seed out of 8 teams, and we got 8th place. We got dead last. That weekend was miserable for all of us. And I made sure that we figured that out on Monday morning when we got back in the room. Bob Young here mentioned water and not getting that back then. And all of these guys kind of chuckled. I think there was a time in 2012 we went didn't get much water in practice. You got it when you was done. We had a 2-hour practice and you got water right after. We didn't have time for that. But, it was a special group, and just being here at Nelsonville-York was amazing. And that's what made me proud is being a graduate from here. And I remember when I was in high school, one thing I wanted to do is come back here and be the head coach. And I always said, I'm going to be the head coach at Nelsonville-York someday. And to be able to do that and then build a program that we built, and the run we had from 2012 to 2019 was amazing. And, these young men, they're the true champions. And they just bought in and did what I expected. And, it was a lot of fun. Zach Mays here, state champion. Thomas, state champion on the same night. Unbelievable. 2 state champions within about a 2-hour period. I didn't even know what to think, and you had Dakota Hook there, and Dakota Mays was a state placer that night. Jacob Kuhn down there, and all these young men now. And one thing I did instill, I wanted them to be fine young men, and they are fine young men. They're all being successful now. They're all in their careers. They're doing good things, and that makes me proud. I want to read one little thing from Carl Moody's family. Carl passed away just over a year ago. Carl was a 2-time state placer for me. He's a part of this team. Big friend to all the guys, best friends to most of them, and tremendous young man. Passed away just over a year ago. His father, who was a huge supporter of our program, you could find him following us anywhere and everywhere. He passed away about 4 months later. His family just wanted to say something real quick, and they shared a memory with me. And Terry, of course, was one of the biggest supporters of Buckeye wrestling, and Carl wanted his family said, as a team, you men spent countless hours together, bettering yourselves and creating lifelong friendships and becoming a Buckeye family. Carl put his blood, sweat, and tears into becoming the best wrestler he could. Loved the Moody family. And by being a member of the Buckeye family, he transferred here from Trimble. And, so he bought in and became a Buckeye true and true. And, I want to thank everybody that was a part of this, the committee. Thank my wife, my family, my kids. That year was real tough. My wife got really sick in 2012, and she stepped back and just made sure I took care of this program. But great group of young men here, and I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you for everybody that got inducted, and congratulations. Thank you very much. And I want to give a couple of the boys wanted to share a quick story. Do you guys still have a couple memories? A couple of them want to share a couple memories.
So not really a memory, kind of like a value that a lot of the folks out here have had instilled in themselves. Like the people watching, like athletics, it's like living the now, right? Experience what you can now and let it build for your future. And being with these guys for 6-7 years, that's what allowed me to do. Like live in the now, but build for the future. And for the young guys watching, remember that. Live in the now, build for the future. Thanks.
So during my induction, I didn't thank my teammates because I was told that we were coming up here as a team. And I couldn't thank them enough for the practices, the hours that we put in, but also the shenanigans. Half times the practice, we would be wrestling or beating each other, and talk about just learning to be like tough with each other. If you guys have wrestled or have been around people that wrestled, you know that cutting weight and just the grind of wrestling is some of the toughest things you can do. And every person on this team helped me grow and become tougher and stronger, and I can't thank them enough. And I just really want to talk about Carl for a second. Carl was pretty much my practice partner for every day we'd come in. You'd always have the one person that you would wrestle with, drill with, and Carl was just fundamental to our success as a team, and just really wanted to shout him out because he would have loved being here for this.
Anyone else? Yinger can't run you anymore. You might as well come up.
Oh, hey everybody, I'm Jacob Kuhn. Just like a couple of things, I guess. First, I want to tell you guys what kind of man Matt Yinger was. So my sophomore year of high school, I will never forget this. We were in the Athens High School gym. Paul Kaiser, the head coach at Athens, looked at Matt and told him I sucked. Those were his exact words. And he did not know what Matt Yinger saw in me because Matt was in my corner every step of the way. Matt literally ripped into him and said, "We are not going to let that be true," pretty much to me. Some other choice words. But I can tell you right now that he put everything he had into making sure that I was successful as a person. And that was really huge for me. That sticks with me to this day when I think about it. Carl. I would love just to say a cool little story about Carl. One of the biggest things that we had, shenanigan-wise, anything, was kind of being a team. And for a moment there, Carl strayed away from us for a second, just kind of being more of an individual, thinking it wasn't a team sport. But one of the biggest things that we got him to do, and one of the biggest things that we kind of held true to ourselves, was just kind of being in the locker room together before things and getting it all out of ourselves before we went out and took care of business. And I remember the moment we got Carl to come back into the locker room with us, start changing with us, and kind of being back with the team. And it was one of those moments where you just kind of felt whole again, because all of these people are really special to me. Even if they, I don't say it enough or show it enough, but all these guys are very special. And I can't thank all these guys enough. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 2012 Nelsonville-York Wrestling Buckeyes. All-around athlete is a term we apply to many of our athletes here at Nelsonville-York, as you well know. All-around athlete within each individual sport, though, is a bit rarer. That player who can be counted on to plug in any spot, any position on the field or court, who knows their assignment and can get the job done, is an absolute luxury to a coach and totally invaluable to a team. David Jolly is that athlete. David Jolly is a 2006 graduate of Nelsonville-York. In his time at NY, he earned 9 varsity letters, as well as numerous all-league, district, and state awards. A smooth, graceful athlete, he might often go on unnoticed until you looked at the box score or statistics sheet and saw his name littered everywhere. His versatility first showed up in baseball, where he made the varsity squad as a freshman and could plug into any infield or outfield slot without losing a beat. David's efforts and ability to fill any role required earning him a starting role on the basketball team. At the end of an evening, he may not have led the Buckeyes in scoring, but most likely he would be high on that list, as well as the rebounding and assist list. He was known for his outstanding defense and ability to guard the opposition's best player, postman or guard alike. David lettered 3 years for the Buckeye basketball team and was named All-TVC his junior and his senior years. At the end of his senior year, he was named to the All-District team. In football, David was part of a 3-year run of TVC titles for the Buckeyes. He found success early in his career, starting as a cornerback as a sophomore for Dave Boston Jr.'s Buckeyes. After 3 years in the Buckeye secondary, he totaled 11 interceptions, third most in school history. On offense, this ultimate all-around athlete started out as a receiver before moving to tailback. As a receiver, David put together a fantastic career, compiling 741 yards, 6 receiving TDs, averaging 24.7 yards per reception. Those numbers were good enough to make David one of the best receivers statistically in our school's history. And they would have been much higher, but it was time to move on to another position and establish himself as one of the legendary Buckeye tailbacks. As always, he made the transition seamlessly, rushing for 1,043 yards, 12 rushing TDs, and averaging just over 6 yards per carry. His 91-yard TD against Athens is still the second longest rushing TD in school history. At the end of his senior year, the Buckeyes won another TVC championship, and David brought home the 2005 TVC Ohio Offensive MVP Award. He would also be named first team All-Southeast District and was an honorable mention All-State selection. In 2020, David was named to the 2000 NYHS Football All-Decade Team in 4 separate positions. David was named first team cornerback, first team athlete, second team wide receiver, and second team punter. David Jolly, all-around athlete.
David, extremely hard worker. You know, one word that reminds me of him is always relentless. You know, he was that guy that was getting after it all the time, every play, every second of the sport. Didn't matter what he was doing, he was going 110%.
Dave was probably the best teammate I've ever had, like regardless of sport. He was a natural leader, you know, a hard worker. He never took a play off in practice, or certainly not in the game. He's tough, which I loved, and he's just generally just a great all-around dude. I cannot say enough good things about Dave. He's one of my favorite people of all time.
The biggest impression I think David left with the legacy is that, you know, you put your mind to it and your heart to it, you can get it done. He was able to defeat people just by his sure ability to just get it done. He never went into one sport or one game thinking he was going to lose. He, you know, expected to win everything, and that was his mentality, and I believe that's what pushed him above everybody else.
He was a great natural leader. He never took a day off in practice or a game. And his entire senior year, I remember, or at least the vast majority of it, he was playing with a banged up shoulder. And you couldn't really tell that from, you know, his tape or watching him, but he was hurting every play, but he never let up. Like, he always showed up working hard, patting people on the butt, saying good hustle, just always there and ready to do work.
I specifically remember my senior year, we was playing Wellston at home. David was bringing the plays in and out from Coach Boston. We were pushing the ball down the field. We eventually just quit going. We quit going to the line. We said, hey, we know what we're running. We're going to shove it down there and throw it, and that's what we did. And David was the leader there. You know, he was a junior. He wasn't in the senior class that year, but everybody expected him to be the top dog and to get it done for us. And, you know, we relied on David to make the big play.
Tough. Just tough, mentally and physically. And yeah, tough. I think that's one of the highest compliments anybody can give to another person. Being a Nelsonville-York football player, you just kind of be, or you're not going to be a Nelsonville football player for very long. He's just from a long line of Nelsonville-York running backs or even football players generally that just exemplify toughness. And I think the legacy that he left, I mean, he passed it on to others, just like this is how you do it, you know, through example and through the things that he said when he did choose to say things. I think he just led for example and showed a lot of people how to be a Nelsonville-York football player.
Great guy, super dedicated, you know, always involved. You know, he bled the brown, white, and orange just like we all did. You know, David was known for his big play ability, but, you know, his main thing was nobody really seen. He was a sleeper on defense, you know, especially on the football field. You know, he was probably one of the best sheer tacklers to ever go through the school.
I could just talk for hours about how much I love the guy, just generally. Specifically, I mean, congratulations, Dave. No one's ever deserved it as much as you, man.
It's a great accomplishment. One of those guys that you expected to be in there. David, you know, that was the guy that you wanted on your team. He was the guy that was getting after it, like I said, and always giving it 110%.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present for induction into the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame, Mr. David Jolly.
Congratulations, buddy. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just want to say it's a real honor to be up here in front of all you. This is an amazing event and ceremony, and I would like to thank Nathan and the Hall of Fame committee for putting all this together. This is awesome, and it's a great thing that Nelsonville-York has this. So first off, I wrote a few things down. We'll see if I stick to the script or not. I would like to thank my family. There hasn't been a game since I started playing athletics and sports that I didn't look up in the stand and see at least 4 family members there watching me. I can't tell you how much that means. My grandpa, this guy right here, would travel 2 hours to Marysville and come watch me play soccer on a weeknight. He missed one game that I can remember. And he got hurt in a construction accident at work and got crushed by a steel plate. And that was it. That was my junior year against Wellston. And, you know, Grandpa, thank you for always being there. I would also like to say thank you to my dad, who absolutely pushed me to give it 110%, as he would say. Every time I would step on the field or on the basketball court or really doing anything, he made sure that I was going to give it my best, and well, it worked. Thanks, Dad. I would also like to thank all my teammates. Standing up here would not be possible without all of them. When you play with multiple Hall of Famers, makes your job a lot easier, makes you look better when you're playing with great players. In particular, I'd like to thank the linemen. These guys do the dirty work in a football game and don't see much of the glory, but you know, they're the ones that really win the game. So thank you to all my teammates. It was a great time playing with you guys. We had a lot of success, and I really enjoyed it. I would also like to thank all my coaches I've had through the years, you know, in football, starting off again with my dad and Eric Dean, who coached us in youth through junior high. They built a foundation for the success we had in high school. Coach Mead was the coach my freshman year. He believed in me enough to, you know, put me on some special teams along with Mr. Steve Young there, and we began our high school careers there. Coming into my sophomore year of high school, it was Coach Dave Boston's Jr.'s first year at head coach in Nelsonville-York. And he was determined to change football in Nelsonville-York, which I believe he did. You know, with him came daily trips to the weight room where we did circuit training, and we'd go from the weight room outside to pull sleds and flip tires every day. He made sure we were working hard and want to be successful. So, as Steve mentioned, I started off my career as a cornerback and playing receiver my sophomore year. Had some success there. My junior year started off much the same way. I caught some passes, and it wasn't until
week 4 game against Crooksville. I was rotating plays in and out with another great player, Charlie Wind, who we rotated plays in out at wingback. And we were struggling to move the ball. We had been battling a few injuries at the beginning of the season. And I remember Coach Boston turned around and looked at me and said, "Jolly, do you remember the plays at tailback? Or do you know the plays at tailback?" And I said, "Yep." And the rest was history. That's where I finished out my career and was just, trying to be as good as I could be. When I got the ball, I had a goal. It was to get a first down every time I touched the ball. Those touchdowns were just bonuses, but my goal was to keep the drive alive. So, as Steve mentioned, my senior year came to a close. We captured our 3rd straight TVC title. We made a playoff appearance all 3 years, my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And I was really proud of that. We brought back smash mouth football, as old man Coach Boston Sr. would say. We're playing smash mouth football, and that's what we did. So as you get older and life goes on, you start to realize what football and sports was really about. It was about teaching you discipline, punctuality, accountability, leadership, and how to be a team player. So all lessons that you would use for the rest of your life to be a successful adult. And now that I'm older, I spend my evenings on the practice field coaching my son's youth football team, or in the gymnasium coaching my daughter's basketball team, trying to teach them all the lessons and qualities that I learned being an athlete in Nelsonville-York. So, we're trying to continue the tradition, starting at the youth level, and I'm really proud to be a Buckeye. So I want to give a special shout out to Coach Boston Jr. and just say, thank you for believing in me, teaching me that hard work pays off, and that pain is temporary and pride is forever. Go Bucks.
Mr. David Jolly. As I mentioned earlier, our presentation order is done by luck of the draw. It turns out our next honoree is one of the younger ones of our group tonight, so at least he should still be awake and have some energy that a few of us old ones may be lacking at this point. Although I forgot he was the father of a newborn. He'd probably like to be home getting some sleep now too, wouldn't you? Dustin Young is a 2012 graduate of Nelsonville-York High School. In his time as a Buckeye, he earned 7 varsity letters, was part of 2 league championships, 2 playoff berths, and solidified his legacy amongst the finest of our stable of extraordinary Buckeye tailbacks. Dustin earned 3 varsity letters on the track in high school as he ran and jumped his way to solid TVC, district, and regional performances. In 2010, he placed 2nd at the district track meet in the 100-meter dash, moving him on to the regional stage. In 2011, he once again earned his way to the regional track meet, this time in 3 events: the 4x1, the 4x2, and the 200-meter dash. Dustin Young's football abilities were evident at a young age. It was no different during his high school years at Nelsonville-York. His speed, so evident on the track, combined with his toughness and grit, made him an elite player when he stepped on the field each Friday night for the Buckeyes. A 3-year varsity starter, Dustin still, like many other of the legendary Buckeye tailbacks, had to wait his turn to dot the I, as Hall of Famer Derek Arnold was the current incumbent. Coach Dave Boston Jr. knew, though, that he had something special that had to be on the field, and he installed him as a starter at wingback and cornerback, and also the team's punter. As a junior, though, it was his turn, and he didn't look back. Dustin's next 2 years in the Buckeye tailback slot were stellar, and would rival some of the best to ever take the handoff in our school's history. In 2 years at the position, Dustin recorded 3,281 yards, 34 TDs, and averaged 8.12 yards per carry. Suffice it to say, whenever Dustin touched the ball, chances were it was going to be, to quote some famous announcer, "First down Buckeyes." In his senior year, Dustin Young tied a school record with 5 rushing TDs scored in a game, a record that remains standing today. At season's end, he had compiled 1,805 yards along with 27 TDs. Those numbers are the third most in their respective categories in school history, trailing only Hall of Famers Justin Gale and the aforementioned Derek Arnold. By the time Dustin finished his career at NY, his name was littered throughout the Buckeye record book. In 2020, he was named to the 2010's Nelsonville-York All-Decade Team as first-team tailback, second-team punter, garnering All-League and All-State honors. Dustin Young took his turn at the most famous of Buckeye positions. He did not disappoint.
If I was going to describe Dustin Young in a single word, I would describe him as tough. There's a lot of other words that you could describe him with. He was a leader. He was a playmaker. He was a great tailback, great football player all around. But most importantly, the thing that I think set him apart is he was tough. No one could question that. Like, he got crushed play after play by huge, huge opponents and never came out because he got banged up.
Just the determination and leadership, if you put those two things together, you can really form a successful outcome.
Like the toughness aspect of what he was doing, like got hurt a lot, and always kept playing and always put the team on his back.
I remember one time he dislocated a finger and he came off the sidelines like it was no big deal, and he showed me his hand, and all I could do was just grab it. And we laughed about it. He went back out on the field the next possession, like it was no big deal. And that kind of was his attitude.
He was as reliable as a teammate. Like, he always showed up. He always played his heart out. If we were going to hand the ball to Dustin, we knew that he was going to, if not score, get us a first down. And if not get us a first down, then at least get us 4 or 5 yards.
His work ethic is second to none. He's always a go-getter, and he put his mind to what he wanted to accomplish. On the football field, he was always determined to be number one, and to do whatever it took to get to that point.
Every game, the first play out was either 20 ISO or 36 trap or some other play that we designed that was going to be a run to Dustin right up the middle, like between the tackles, through the defense, and we kind of set the tone for the game. I mean, he was definitely the backbone of the offense. He was a long line of hard-nosed running backs that Nelsonville-York kind of became known for. He carried the torch, arguably, with pretty good success. And then a lot of the things that we were able to do offensively in high school outside of running was because he was such a run threat. All right, we're going to hand it off to Dustin right behind the center, right through the middle of the defense, and he's probably going to run over the linebacker if they even catch him. And if not, he's going to run over the safety. Anyone that scouted us at all knew that we were going to hand the ball to him.
But you could always feel his presence, getting dudes hyped up, and really just setting the tone for what was about to come on that series of downs. One thing that he was big on was the team aspect. He didn't care if he did good, he wanted the team to do good. Bringing people with him. He wasn't selfish about winning his accolades or all this stuff. He wanted the team there with him along the way. He didn't let
one hiccup in the road determined the rest of his season. He was going to go out there and grind until the very end.
I would just tell him congratulations. You deserve it. Thanks for many fun years playing together. It was good times. I always look back on them with fond memories, and a lot of those fond memories are you in the end zone.
Yeah, you can be a star athlete, but are you a star athlete and a good teammate? That's the real question. And I think he was both.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present for induction into the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame, Mr. Dustin Young.
First off, Bob, you got to ask who you're donating to not go last every time. It kind of seems that's where Nathan puts me as being a Young, so I'm not sure how you got in the middle of the pack here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dustin Young. I was a tailback in Nelsonville-York from second grade all the way up until my 12th grade year here. I was talking to Nathan last night on the phone. He was texting me and asked me if I wrote a speech for the Hall of Fame induction. I advised him that I hadn't yet, and I sent him a picture of a blank notes in my iPhone that was labeled Hall of Fame. He then got to joking around and said, well, I'm sure it'll be great. You do, best under pressure. I was thinking the same thing, but then I thought back, in 2012 when we were playing Athens, and I realized that Nathan's pressure, kicking that game-winning field goal for us, failed us, so I figured I better prepare. We went on to lose that game, messing up our perfect record, like I said, the perfect storm we had going. But it's not like everybody remembers that forever or anything. But so I want to thank the committee, Nathan, for everything you guys do. A couple coaches that are here tonight, Coach Klein, Coach Cox. As you guys notice, I'm not up here for one of your guys' sports. I wasn't always the best at baseball, and really didn't like the 400-meter dash too much, but it's where you had me sometimes. Also like to thank my family for being here. Got a beautiful wife and daughter there. You guys have probably heard her all night. She's never been this vocal before, so she picked a good day to start. My mom and dad, John and Lori Young, if you guys don't know. Without you guys, I wouldn't be here, literally. But without your hard work and dedication to the family, I wouldn't be standing on this stage tonight, being inducted into the Hall of Fame. You guys always made sure that I made it to practices, games. You made sure that I had whatever equipment that I needed to get the job done. Being a father now and working a full-time job, I see how extremely hard that had to be for you guys. I could barely make it home on time for dinner, let alone be somewhere else. Dad, you always made sure that I had that one quote in the back of my mind every time I stepped out on the field. And that was, son, you're lucky I couldn't bring a BB gun into the stadium. Because every time that you're not running full speed, I would shoot you in the butt with it. So I was glad that he couldn't get that through the door, because I feel like he probably would have took advantage of that. I want to give a special thanks to the offensive line, starting up from second grade all the way up until my senior year. A lot of guys don't realize, but that's where it starts. Without them, I'd just be a tackling dummy that had a 5 or 10 yard head start run against them. Dakota Hook, we were linebackers together in junior high. I can think of just one year whenever his dad was our coach, and he put us together as center linebacker and outside linebacker. And I don't know if we fought more than we played football or what it was. I can just remember vividly grabbing him by the face mask and punching him in the helmet one practice just because we had missed a tackle together. Also, as you guys heard, he was the one that put my finger back in place for me because the trainer didn't want to touch it when I came off the field. So he pulled on it, we laughed about it, taped it together, and on we went. I'd like to think that my success had something to do with my lucky pair of game day underwear that I had. Red and yellow lightning bolts. They said the Flash around the waistband. I wore them every Friday. You could ask Nathan. Or maybe it was that big pot of brownies that Becky Norway always made me that I handed out to my linemen or some guys on the team. One thing that comes to mind, though, whenever I think about my success for football, and unfortunately he couldn't be here tonight due to his dedication to football, was Coach Dean. Nathan, not you. I know you like to think it's you, but it's not. It's your father. Throughout all my years of football, I can only think of one year that Coach Dean was not a coach coaching our team, and that's the year we had one of the meanest coaches around, which would have been Coach Hook, coaching our junior high team. From grade school, opening every game up with the same exact play. It was always a cross buck or a wedge, and it would send me on a 73-yard run from one end of the field to the other, all the way up until, high school, with him being head coach, the offensive coach. Catch up here. Coach Dean took us on from being the bobbleheads running around with helmets on, chasing each other around, not knowing what we were doing, to taking our team and creating it into something great. He taught me the fundamentals of football, and throughout the years, he reminded me of those fundamentals very often. So overall, I'm thankful for this induction, along with the friends and memories I've made along the way. But I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for Coach Dean and if it wasn't for the guys that I was playing with and my family. So I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to be here tonight, following some of the greats. David Jolly, I remember watching him, as a sixth grader, thinking, how can you be that guy? How can you do that? I never thought that we'd be on the same stage the same night, following right behind you. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I want to thank you guys for this opportunity, and hope you all had a good night.
Folks, NYHSHOF.com is our website. You can go on that site and nominate any athlete for next year's class. We welcome that, and we usually meet in April to go over those. So get online and do that. Nominate your favorite athlete for the Hall of Fame. Athletes, once again, that were nominated, that were inducted tonight, we'll be announcing you at the football game tomorrow night. Be there at the big inflatable helmet around 6:20. Once again, 2023 class of the Nelsonville-York Athletic Hall of Fame. Would you please stand? Ladies and gentlemen, our 2023 inductees. We thank you all for coming tonight, folks. It's been a great night. I hope you had a good time. I hope to see you next year. Hope to see you tomorrow night. Thanks a bunch.